You're going to love this. Trust me, what you're seeing now is my normal state.
Welcome, I'm Spaghetti King, and I felt like I had to make a video about this. So I did watch Evidence.zip 2 by Hacks, and I really wasn't sure if I wanted to make a video about this or necessarily how I would make a video about this, because really no matter what I say it's going to be electric and people are going to, be mad. So it kind of doesn't really matter what I say in a certain sense. And I'm kind of like, whatever, honestly. My opinion is I was like, but I'm just like, at this point, whatever. I'm just going to say exactly what I think, and I'm just going to go. Part of the benefit of, not having some big following or being accountable to some brand is I can just go and just be completely honest, which very few people can say. And to begin with that, one thing I'll say is, I remember I've deleted all my comments from that video. A comment I did post is that I basically said that I respected Hacks, even in places I disagreed with him, for being completely honest about what he felt the community had to know about Leffen. And I was called like a Hacks bot for saying that, so I was like, whatever, this is, I need to make a video about this. That's actually how I should address this, because this is kind of how this is going. Now, one thing I'll say is this video has received more dislikes than it has likes, which is always kind of a good sign because it shows that, people aren't robots. But at the same time, I'm not really sure about it. And the reason is because I'm very mixed about this video. I'm not going to come in and say, yeah, well, Hacks is right, I'm on the side of Hacks, yeah. And I'm not going to be like, well, this is a stupid video, yeah. Because look, I'm not really a Hacks fan or a Leffen fan. If you had to ask me who I like more, probably like Hacks, but like barely. Like, not really by that much. And probably I'll say this. If Hacks were more popular than Leffen, I probably would like Hacks less than I do Leffen, honestly. It's just that Leffen is a lot more popular than Hacks, and has been for a long time, because Leffen is a better player than Hacks overall. In long-term scale, right? So, Leffen's popularity has increased the problems he bodes more so with Melee overall, I would say. Now, to begin with this, understand that there are probably other people who have similar thoughts to Hacks. This is one thing you should understand. There are probably other people, other upper echelon people in the Melee community who have similar feelings about Leffen that Hacks does. Don't think that Hacks is saying this as someone who's completely insane and completely maniacal. Understand, I mean, he shows, of course, the Evidence.zip, the original Evidence.zip testimonies of people complaining about Leffen back then. And one thing I have said is I've never heard Armada ever rescind his Evidence.zip statements about Leffen. And I think he still believes them, honestly. He doesn't talk about them for a business, political reason, but I think Armada probably still believes the same things that he said back then. And he said quite a bit of things. I mean, you see it in the video. Because I already knew about Evidence.zip from way back in the day. I'd actually read Evidence.zip and I checked it out. A lot of people haven't. You have a lot of newbies in Melee, a lot of these young kids. They're like, they've heard about the legend of Evidence.zip. They never actually were around for that stuff. They don't really even know what it means much. And I'm not here to explain what Evidence.zip is. It was basically a, Smashboard's compilation of all of Leffen's posts where he had, basically been shown to be very disrespectful to a lot of people. A lot of the people in the Evidence.zip testimonies called Leffen psychopathic, very disrespectful to other people, and basically just all around a bad guy for the community in general. And you see that throughout. Now, Hacks is trying to push... Hax here is doing more than trying to smear Leffen. He's trying to characterize Leffen as psychopathic, as maniacal, as someone who is trying to take down all of Melee and whatnot. I think it's overplaying it a bit. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with anime comparisons or trying to hype things up or trying to make things dramatic, because this is Melee, and we do that all the time, okay? We, we are a bit of a cinematic group. So I don't necessarily have a problem with the anime comparison, like comparing Leffen to Kira from Death Note or whatever. I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but I think it starts to become cringe when he tries to make all these political comparisons. Because this is really the thing that bugs me about Hax, is when he talks about politics, he just comes off as really pretentious to me. Because he tries to... I mean, he uses the term red-pilled in this video, and he tries to act like, oh, Here's the thing, Hax isn't based. Hax isn't based. If you want to talk politics for a second, Hax is not based. He's like an alt-light millennial. He's not based or red-pilled. He just isn't. He goes off in this video talking about, inalienable rights, basic human rights, And it's like, look, if you want to talk about, and he talks about how, Leffen believes in totalitarianism and compares Leffen to, sentiments of Mein Kampf and stuff like that. And in the beginning, he starts the video off with, a Hitler quote, and it's like, that honestly makes him look, it's bad optics. It's bad optics, especially when there are a lot of Melee people who are just quite left-wing in general. They just are. Because Melee is kind of a esoteric, strange kind of environment, and it invites a lot of just abnormal characters. Now, you have right-wing people in Melee, of course, as well. I mean, and Hax can be one of them, and I've said this before, Melee should be apolitical. The fact that Mango can go around being like, USA, USA, and it's pretty much apolitical, shows that Melee can and should be apolitical. So, Hax making all these political comparisons, for me, basically puts a distaste in it for me, and makes it basically clash with what I want and expect from Melee, to be honest. Now, to go into the substance of what he says, he's saying that Leffen is trying to create a totalitarian-esque social situation for Melee via a variety of methods. Number one, by banning anyone he disagrees with on Twitter. He creates basically a cycle of an echo chamber-esque situation where only people who agree with him reverb his points back to back, and therefore anyone who would criticize him does not even attempt, because they'll be banned if they try it on his account, and their own account is so minor that they can't. And I guess he does this for top players as well. Other top players don't criticize him. He has these political machinations all around the Melee community to stop people from criticizing him. He mentions that Samox censored things about the Evidence.zip things from the metagame documentary, which is notable. Because again, it's not like everything he's saying is crazy. Again, one thing I don't want to come in here telling you is, well, here's why Hax is insane, and here's why Leffen is, innocent. That's not what it is. It's, here's why Hax is kind of on edge and kind of a bit off saying these things, but he does have a reason for saying it, and he should not be criticized for being honest in what he believes, okay? This is one thing I will say, because here's the thing, again, like I said, Armada probably holds similar views in a lot of regards. A lot of the other Swedish players probably still do. Other top players who challenged Leffen back in the day probably still have problems. But they just don't talk about it. Hax can talk about this because he has his own business. Keep that in mind. Hax, as far as I know, is not sponsored, and He runs his own business. Hax is autonomous to say what he wants, and in this case, he is. And the thing is, that's good. You see, here's the problem with sponsorships and politics and corporations is they will filter what people say. They will politicize things. They will want you to be politically correct in these things. They have optics to fulfill. And therefore, the reason, Melee pretty much, once it went into esports era, Melee kind of transitioned from like a honor culture kind of thing, where you would basically figure out feuds through like settling in tournament and like money matches and trash talk and this like honest displays, to now where it's like a shame culture, where it's like it's Twitter followings and it's echo chamber kind of situations and reverb and optics, and this is how Melee is now. It's nowhere near as abrasive and out there as it used to be, and sponsors have a part in that. The community getting older has a part in that. There are a variety of things, but it's true. And Hax in this case is basically coming out with a direct shot at Leffen. In this case, not through vulgar trash talk, but through this insane kind of like documentary thing. And he does go through against these slates against Leffen, and I'm not going to review the whole video for you. One thing I will say is if you're going to critique the video, watch the entire thing. I've seen the entire thing. Watch the entire thing, please. Seriously, watch the entire thing. If you want to seriously criticize it, then, take the time out, right? Don't go, well, this is kind of dumb. Like, if you think it's dumb, don't watch it, but, don't fully criticize it if you haven't seen the whole thing. I'll just say that, right? Be reasonable to him at least. I mean, think of what, like, this dude edited this whole thing together. This dude is putting his reputation on the line for this. Watch the whole thing first before you criticize it, at least, right? That's one thing I'll say. What else do I have to say? I don't know Leffen's response to this. I think Leffen will have some kind of response to this. Leffen always has responses to these things. Leffen is someone who is very sensitive to criticism, even if it's not even directed at him. I thought actually a good example Hax provided is when he talked about Magic Scrumpies and nerfing Foxwood. Leffen's railing on that totally confused me at the time, because I was saying, what's your problem with this dude? And I guess the only problem with it is that he was critiquing Leffen's character that he uses, possibly implying to noobs that Leffen uses an overpowered character. The fact that Leffen was so sensitive to that criticism I found very strange, but I mean it makes sense when you think of Leffen is very sensitive to reputation, and very sensitive to perception, and very sensitive to these things. And one thing I haven't really said is I don't think Hax defining Leffen as a narcissist, psychopathic, Machiavellian figure is necessarily wrong. I think in a lot of ways there's actually a lot of truth to that. Now, Hax says, oh, well, Leffen is, possibly psychopathic, and he defines that as objectively evil. This is what objective evil is now. Number one, objective evil doesn't exist unless you believe in God, because all actions that have moral connotation can be judged to be moral or immoral if there is no moral authority, no universal moral authority to talk down that. In other words, if Leffen thinks lying is moral, then why is his thought any less valid than Hax's or anyone else's? And the answer is, unless you have a God who says that lying is injustice, unjust. Sorry, it's a bit late. Then there's really nothing that absolutely tells you that Machiavellian traits are immoral or psychopaths are immoral. And I'm not even going to come in here and say psychopaths are necessarily immoral. I think psychopaths are just people who simply have a malfunction of personality. They, of course, lack empathy. I mean, I'm someone who has Asperger's syndrome over here, so I am a non-neurotypical abnormality. You cannot define you cannot define those who lack certain, you know, traits of neurotypicals to be, you know, innately moral or immoral. Now, are psychopaths prone to immoral behavior? Immoral in, you know, a godly sense and in a basic sense, because people know basic morality. People have a conscience, and that comes from their soul. People know basic right and wrong, you know. And yeah, psychopaths are more prone to it. They aren't necessarily guaranteed to partake in it, but they are more prone to it. And in the case of Leffen, I believe he does showcase a lot of those traits. And I do believe Leffen should be called out for those things, although, you know, he won't by most. Hax is calling him out, and I don't necessarily agree with the method Hax has called him out in, or a lot of the terms he used, or whatnot, because I have some, in this case, some kind of like semi-personal grievances with Hax. But I respect Hax for being honest and for taking a stance against his problems with Leffen where they are. Because I've had a lot of these problems with Leffen for years, and I've said that everyone says, oh, Leffen has changed since Evidence.zip. I don't think so. I don't think so, and I think that he's remained, you know, consistent as he was before. And I think he is someone who is privy to the perception of those around him. And I think Leffen is, you know, I think that's how he is, and I don't think he really has changed much from how he was back then. And if you look at, for example, one thing Hax pointed out is the reputation of Leffen and the reputation of other Smashers. You'll notice the decline in the reputation of other Smashers alongside the increase in Leffen's reputation. And I don't think that's coincidental. When HBox's reputation severely declined after the whole anti-Puff tirades Leffen went on, as well as Leffen's participation in his slights against Zero, yeah, Leffen clearly played that off to get attention and to basically get more social media influence. Leffen, I think, is probably the most sensitive of anyone regarding that, and the most competitive about getting that. And he's succeeded for that reason. Now, I mean, Hax would portray Leffen as like a villain for that, whereas I would just say, you know, Leffen is sensitive to these things. He knows where to take advantage, where he can get it. And I don't really blame him for doing it necessarily. But, you know, the point is, Hax's description of Leffen's character and his personality, I think, is mostly accurate. His depiction of Leffen under those traits, though, I think is a little bit hyperbolic. But lastly, him coming out and being honest about problems he sees in Melee, I think is good on him. I think it's good for the community. And I'm interested to see where this goes from here. I guess the last point I would say is Samox, you know, removing Evidence.zip information, I think, was also very disappointing, because I'm someone who was aware of Evidence.zip and whatnot, and it's one of the reasons why I never really trusted Leffen that much. Again, I'm not a Leffen hater necessarily, but, you know, the dude did what he did and said what he said, and people called him out for it back then, and I don't think he's really, you know, changed much from then in a lot of ways. Now, that's how he is. He's a trash talker, and he brings this kind of energy to Melee. And you know what? I like that on its own cases. But yeah, I think Leffen has issues, and, you know, I you know, am not particularly privy to them, so I'm just someone who can come out and say that honestly. I think probably a lot of other people probably feel the same way. They just can't say it. You know, I can, thankfully, because I'm not controlled, but that's really what I have to say. So I guess I'll say credits to Hax for being honest, although I did have my problems where they were. Credits to Melee for still being the greatest game ever. I do think Leffen genuinely loves Melee, and Hax saying Leffen wants to destroy Melee, I don't really think so. I think Leffen wants to basically amass as much attention and power as he can, and he'll probably destroy anyone else in his way in the game or outside the game to get that. I think that's just how he is. And there are some benefits from that, and there are some detriments to that. But I don't think Leffen wants to destroy Melee, so if he does, it would be inadvertent. I think Leffen actually loves Melee. I mean, you don't put that much time into something because you want to destroy it. No, I think that's I think that's exaggeration. But, so yeah, we'll see how it goes from here. We'll see how Melee goes from here. I'm not exactly sure. So it's a very interesting situation, you know. Yeah, so that's all I have to say. So thank you for watching. I'm Spaghetti King. I love you all, and farewell.